Hi everyone, welcome back to Journeying with Janay. I'm Janay. So, as you noticed on last Friday, you did not have an episode of Journeying with Janay, and today's Janay fact is going to be the reason why. Normally I'm a person that I'm just used to pushing through, and my motto is always push through. But last week, with everything going on, I was just physically, mentally, and emotionally drained, and I was actually reminded that I was human. And I always say God has a funny way of doing things because during that period of being drained and pouring back into myself, I actually did some self work, which led me to today's episode. So, with that being said, the title of today's episode is I Forgave, but Have I Let Go? And just a little disclaimer, this episode is going to be one of the most vulnerable, raw, and real and authentic episodes that I've ever done. Normally when I choose a topic, it's something generally that I've been through and I've worked through therapy, and I've pretty much gotten over or gotten a good handle on how to deal with it. But this episode is something that I'm currently working through. So the perfectionist in me always want to give you guys something that I've already been through it, so I can talk about it a little bit more eloquently, or I can have a little bit more advice. But I was like, I don't always just want to present something perfect because I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. So for authenticity's sake, I wanted to talk to y'all about forgiveness and letting go today because it's something that I am personally still working through. And it's something that I just feel that makes us all human because some of us have issues with forgiving and some of us have issues with letting go, or some have issues with both. And sometimes we think when we forgive a person or we forgive or another person forgives us that that's just the end of it, but it's not. The goal is to heal from it, and in order to heal from it you have to let go. So today we're gonna first, like I said, the title is I Forgave, but Have I Let Go? So the root word of forgave or forgiveness is to forgive. So to actually forgive, I always do my research and I seen three definitions that I really loved about the word forgive. So the first definition is to grant a pardon to someone. The second definition is to cease to feel resentment against someone. And the third definition is to cancel a debt or liability. And for me and for this episode, really, we're going to focus on the second definition, which says to cease to feel resentment against someone. So starting out with forgiveness, for me, it took me a very, very long time to fully understand the power of forgiveness. Because when you forgive someone, you not only set them free, but you set yourself free. But for so long, I would focus so much on the actual hurt that I felt as a result of whatever act a person did towards me, that it was so hard for me to forgive. And then I had to step back and say, you're still dealing with this, but the person who actually done it has moved on. And that's when I started to actually realize that forgiveness is for me and not for that other person. Yes, it does kind of set them free, but I started to realize that it's more for me. I have to forgive in order to move forward in life. And once I realized that, it was so powerful for me, and it made it much easier for me to then begin to extend forgiveness. And we find sometimes that we don't want to extend forgiveness because we're hurt or we're mad or we're upset. Or sometimes we just feel people, we didn't deserve it, or they should have did me better than that. They should have treated me better than that, which is true. But when we sit back and we think, we're not perfect beings, so we're going to make mistakes and we're going to wrong others, we're going to hurt others, we're going to do things that others may not like, but we will want them to forgive us. And I'm a person that when I do something wrong to somebody, it weighs on my conscience. I can't sleep most of the time, or I'm always thinking about it and thinking about how to fix it. And so I had to say, okay, if I feel this way, if I did someone something wrong, I could only imagine how they feel. So why not give them that release from that and forgive them, even if I haven't let go of the hurt yet? And so I started to realize how important forgiveness actually was. But then a step further, I started to realize how we forgive others, but oftentimes we don't forgive ourselves. And this episode actually came about because last week I did two journeying with Janay's on forgiveness, one about forgiving others and one about forgiving yourself. And I started to think back on a lot of things that have happened with me, and it's like, okay, I forgave them, but did I forgive myself? And most people would say, well, why would you have to forgive yourself for something you allowed for something that someone else did? And then that's when I began to think that I have to forgive myself because I allowed them to do it. Or if they were in my life and they did the behavior before and I forgave them and I let it go, and I'm like, we can move on. But then I allowed them to continue to perpetuate that same behavior. And at some point in time, you have to step back and take ownership of, hey, I'm allowing someone to do this to me. Or if you've made mistakes and you like, if I wouldn't have made this mistake, my life could have been so much further. If I wouldn't have made this mistake, I wouldn't be in the place that I'm in now. And that stood out to me because being a perfectionist, I can do 10 good things but make 3 mistakes, and I'm not going to focus on the good things. I'm going to focus on the mistakes. And that is a good and a bad thing, because of course you want to focus on the mistakes you made so you can learn the lessons from them, so you can grow and so you can move on. But I was looking at them like, just downing myself, like, you stupid, you better than that, why did you do that? And I was more so beating myself up instead of learning the actual lesson from the mistake. And I had to take a step back and say, you easily forgive other people now at that point in my life, but now you having a hard time forgiving yourself. And so I was actually in bed journaling, and I started to think about the things or the mistakes that I feel I've made, or things that maybe just didn't go my way and I could have did better. Or I even started to think about how I stayed in certain positions for so long just out of fear of going to the next thing, the fear of the unknown, the fear if I'm going to succeed, the fear. And I started to realize how fear plagued me and made me stay in positions that I shouldn't have been in, and I could have been so much further along. And I started to beat myself up. And I was like, you can't beat yourself up, because when you stayed in a position, it was a bad thing to stay in for so long, but you finally gained the strength to move forward. And I had to say, Janay, you have to forgive yourself. But then I started to realize how hard forgiving myself actually was, because if anybody else don't protect me or don't protect my heart, I am supposed to protect my heart. But I let myself down. I let myself make those mistakes, or I allow myself to stay in those positions. And I had to say, take a step back and just remind myself that I am human, that I'm never going to be perfect. And as long as I learn from those mistakes, that they become lessons for me to be better. So at that moment, I started to forgive myself. And I just want to take a moment here. Something that I did that I found that was very useful in helping me heal and forgive myself is to actually sit down and to write a letter to myself. So before I wrote the letter to myself, I actually started to write down the things that I wanted to forgive myself for. So I wanted to forgive myself for not always choosing me. And I feel a good bit of people do that, but especially as women, we have a tendency, because we're caretakers by nature, we're nurturers by nature. We nurture other people, and sometimes we leave ourselves on the back burner, and we do it so often until we're empty and we have nothing left to give, and then we're frustrated, and then we're like, we can't go no more because we have nothing left to give. And so there was so many times that I was able to go back and said, I should have chose me here, but I chose something else. I should have chose me here, but I chose to please people. I should have chose me here, but I chose to stay. And by choosing to stay, I wasn't choosing me. And at that moment, I wrote the list down, and then I began to forgive myself. I began to release myself from the liability or from the debt. I erased it from my life, and I began to forgive myself. And until you actually forgive yourself, you can forgive countless amounts of people and everything is fine. But until you actually forgive yourself, you won't move forward to true healing until you can actually identify yourself, that I've made a mistake, that I didn't choose me, that I allowed people to run over me, or whatever that you did to yourself. You will never be able to move forward to a place of being whole, because there's things still broken inside of you that, one, you need to fix, and then two, you need to forgive yourself in order to move forward. And I stress that one so much because I know personally that I've forgiven people, but it was until I had to sit down and look in the mirror or write in my journal, which is kind of like a mirror for me. I didn't realize how I hadn't forgave myself, and I didn't realize how important it was to actually forgive myself. So I encourage everybody who's watching this to please forgive yourself. Take the time, do the work. Of course, forgive others, but forgive yourself. Be gentle with yourself, and be as gentle and caring and nurturing with yourself, with your heart, with your soul, as you are with others. Because constantly forgiving them is great, because you should, but never forgiving yourself is just going to pile on and pile on and pile on until you can't take anymore. And that's where insecurity starts to come into play. That's where sometimes even self-harm starts to come into play, because you don't like who you see, because you haven't done the work, or you haven't forgiven yourself for the things that you allowed others to do to you. And so it is, I can't stress enough how important it is to forgive yourself. And going back to extending forgiveness to others, it is very important, probably of equal importance, once you forgive someone, that you also look at life after forgiveness. And some people might think that's funny to say, but there is a life after forgiveness, because if you just stay in the same point that you were before you forgave them, have you truly forgiven them? If you're still in the same place emotionally and mentally, it's not going to help you forgiving them, because the forgiveness is to set you free, but you're not free yet. So sometimes once you forgive a person, you then have to set boundaries, which is so important, especially a person that has done you wrong several times and you've had to forgive them several times. It's like, okay, in order to protect my heart, in order to protect my spirit, I now have to set boundaries. And I'm here to tell you that it is okay to set boundaries. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you haven't fully forgiven them. It just means that I value my heart and I value myself. And in order to let you know, hey, this is not going to happen again, I'm not going to allow you to hurt me like this again, I am going to set a boundary. It is so important to set boundaries after forgiveness. Forgive, but then set the boundary, especially if it's something that's been done habitually. You have to set that boundary to protect yourself, but to also let them know, hey, I value myself. I still love you. I have forgiven you, but this boundary is here, and I'm not going to allow you to cross it again and be able to actually stay in my life. Which brings me to my second point of life after forgiveness. Sometimes after you forgive someone, they do not have to stay in your life. And some people might say, that's not true forgiveness either. But it actually is. I'm no longer holding you in my heart. I'm no longer angry at you. I just don't have a space for you in my life anymore, because I can't hurt like I hurt when you did that to me. So sometimes you might even have to say, I forgive you, I love you, but now I have to let you go in order to protect me. And I've had to do that with friends. I've had to do that with family. I've had to set that boundary, or I had to say, hey, I'm sorry, but we can no longer coexist peacefully for my peace of mind, for my heart to be whole. I can't coexist peacefully. So you might not be able to be in my life. And that is okay. You have no ill will towards the person. You still wish them the best. You still love them. But they just can't be in your life for you all to coexist peacefully, and most of all for your inner peace and for your heart to be whole. So that is my second point with life after forgiveness. And my third point, which is the biggest one and in the title of the episode, life after forgiveness requires letting go. So this is the point in my personal journey where I struggle the most. And when you let go of something, which I think is perfectly displayed in the second definition of forgiveness, which is to cease to feel resentment against someone. I find that I can easily forgive now. Before I couldn't. I held grudges and it just wasn't healthy. But now I can forgive you. I can say I still love you. But now I'm left to pick up the pieces of my heart that you shattered, and I don't know how to let go. And when now what I'm working on doing is letting go. And sometimes I've had to realize that my brain has let go. I have let go. I know that maybe no longer we can be in the same space, or we can laugh together, talk together, whatever it was we used to do together, be in relationship, be in friendship, be family, and have a bond. Mentally, I know that it is no longer good for me, but my heart hasn't let go yet. And I find so many people are there. They're still there trying to pick up the broken pieces. They're still there trying to mend their heart. They're still there trying to figure out, number one, how did we even get here? And how did we go from good to not good? How did we go from being able to be around each other to not being able to be around each other? And now that I know that, hey, I need to let go of you for my personal sanity, but my heart doesn't know. And I feel with forgiveness, that happens a whole lot. We've forgiven the person, but we haven't actually let go of the actual hurt because we're not fully healed from it. So it's like, if I've forgiven you, but I haven't let go of the hurt because I'm not healed from it, then how do I even let go? And this, for me, is where I struggle. But then I begin to find that once you go back and do the work, you forgive them and you forgive yourself, it starts to become a little easier to let go. The first step is forgiving them, as I stated before. Then that second step is looking back and seeing, what did you do to allow that behavior to continue? And I find once you forgive yourself, it begins to become a lot easier to let go. Letting go, trust me, is not a process that happens overnight. Letting go is not something that is easy. For some it is. For some people, they could, like the saying says, they could forgive and forget. But I was reading Sarah Jakes' book, Don't Settle for Safe, and she said something that was powerful. She said, forgive and remember. Because if you forget, then you forgive and forget, then you lose out on the lessons that you've actually learned from having to forgive that person. And your heart should never go back to its original state. Your mind should never go back to its original state. You should always be growing more and more and more. And you can only grow through mistakes and the lessons that you learn from those mistakes. And so at that moment, I read that, and I've been praying and journaling and just looking at instances in my life that I'm still dealing with today that has been so hard for me to let go of. And forgiveness is supposed to be an act that is freeing for the other person, but mainly for you. But I find if you don't let go, you don't truly become free, because something is still holding you down. Something is still holding your heart hostage because you haven't let go of that situation. So, my advice to anyone who, like myself, who struggles to let go. And before I give the advice, I want to say too, I am an overthinker by nature. So anyone who's an overthinker, you're going to constantly replay things in your head. And the more you replay them in your head, the harder it is for you to let go of them. So my advice is to let go. I have a few things that I do and that I'm putting into practice that has actually started to help me to let go. So the first thing that I actually do is forgive the person. The second thing I actually do is begin to forgive myself. Then the third part of my healing is writing out what it is that I need to let go. And for some people, that might not be a big thing. But for me, once it's on paper and it's in front of me, I can actually see what it is. I can actually identify what it is, so I can begin to work on letting go. So, of course, first, forgive them. Second, forgive yourself. But then start to identify why you need to forgive yourself and why you need to let go. And you also need to realize that when you don't let go, you're holding yourself hostage to the hurt. Once you actually, the hurt is here and you haven't let go of it, so you're holding it just like I'm holding my own hands. But slowly but surely, once you start to forgive them, forgive yourself, and pick up the pieces of your heart and pick up the lessons, you start to let go. And for some people it happens gradually as my hands are moving, and for some people it happens instantly. I'm not an instantly person, but once I start to see that, hey, that person was in my life for a reason, whether it was a lesson or a blessing. The thing that happened to me was to teach me something. So now that hurt, it's easier for me to let go. Once I identify what it is, and once I can go back and think of, hey, it might have hurt me, but it taught me something. It might have broken me, but now I'm going to take those broken pieces of my heart and put it back together. But when my heart is back together, it's going to be stronger now, because I'm going to know how to handle this, or I'm going to know what not to accept next time. So you have to forgive, but forgiveness does you no good without truly letting go. So today, anyone that's watching me, I encourage you to start to work those steps to let go, because you can't get to you can't get to wholeness or being healed from it if you don't let go of it. You can't say, oh, I'm good from it, but then I'm still revisiting it in my mind, or oh, I'm good from it, but I'm still revisiting it in my heart, because then truly you're not healed from it. You're forgiven, but you haven't let go of it. And in order to let go of it, and once you let go of it, is when you will see the new things start to come in your life. There's been some things that has just shattered my heart. And I started to realize that I forgave, but I hadn't let go. And I was wondering why in the time frame it might have been 6 months, it might have been a year, it might have been 2 years, but I'm like, I can't move forward. But I forgave them, and I thought that's all I needed to do. And then I started to realize that I have to actually let go of it, because if not, I'm just still holding on to it. And holding on to it, I can't accept the beautiful things that will come after it. So today I encourage anybody that you did forgive, and you're like, I forgave the person and I'm done with it. You're not truly done with it until you forgive yourself, until you heal yourself, until you identify what's going on so you can begin to heal yourself. But most of all, until you let go of it. So I'm not sure what you need to let go of, but I know there are some things that I need to let go of. And you can't walk into what God has for you next holding on to the baggage of the last thing that hurt you. Because every time you go into a new thing, you're bringing that baggage along with you. So I have one bag from the last hurt. Then I have another bag from the hurt before that. Then I have another bag from the first hurt. Then I have another bag from the second hurt. So just like think in your mind of an example when you're trying to carry luggage or when you're trying to carry grocery bags. At some point, your hands are so full that you can no longer carry anymore. Or your hands are so full that you're actually weighed down and you can't move anymore. So just like you can't, just as in order to pick up more things or in order to move to a different place, you have to take off some of the weight that you're already carrying. And not letting go of something is like added weight onto your body. You can't move, or if you do move, you can't move as fast as you would normally do because you have so much weight. So today I encourage you, whatever things that you haven't let go of them. Let the baggage go. Free your hands so that you can accept the next thing that will come. Let the baggage go so you're not standing stuck in the exact same place that you were before, because you have too much weighing on you that you can't move forward. And heal. The most important thing in any video that I make, any topic that I talk about, is gonna be moving towards wholeness and being fully healed. And you can't do that holding on to baggage. You can't do that holding on to hurt. So I really hope and pray that through watching this video, you can begin to let go. Begin the process. I'm not going to lie to you. I've shed many tears. I've got emotional many times, and I'm just like, girl, don't cry too much because your lashes gonna come off. But seriously, you're gonna shed some tears during this process. You're going to maybe have to face some ugly truths during this process. You're going to have to kind of revisit that hurt so you can draw a lesson from it, so you can move on. But once you get through the process of forgiving the person, forgiving yourself, and then most importantly, letting go of it, you will be so much further in life. You will be able to get and gain so much more out of life because your hands are free from that baggage. You've let go of it, so your hands are free to be able to accept it. But most of all, you will be closer to being that whole person and being that healed person. So, as always with every episode, I thank you for coming along with me on my journey as we turn pain into purpose. If you're watching on YouTube, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you're watching on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel. The link will be in the caption. So, thank you for watching. Bye.